You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
So today, as we were kicking around things to do, like we normally do, it takes us about an hour and a half to do. The lightning rod struck, and we landed on Psalm 16. So Zach, do what you do with the reading of scripture, however you're going to do it today. We didn't really work that out in pre-production, so
I don't know that the lightning rod struck as much as we just gave up and picked the psalm. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm calling it divine intervention.
Do what you want to do. So today we're reading Psalm 16, and it's 11 verses out of the beginning of the Psalms. Remembering that these are, just songs and poems and things that are written in really fun, interesting ways. I often see much of David or even the psalmist's humanity come out through these, and in Psalm 16 really is no exception. It does that as well. So here from Psalms: protect me. Let's learn how to read again. All right. Protect me, God, because I take refuge in you. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. Apart from you, I have nothing. Now, as for the holy ones in the land, the magnificent ones that I was so happy about, let their suffering increase because they hurried after a different God. I won't participate in their blood offerings. I won't let their names cross my lips. You, Lord, are my portion, my cup. You control my destiny. The property lines have fallen beautifully for me. Yes, I have a lovely home. I will bless the Lord who advises me. Even at night, I am instructed in the depths of my mind. I always put the Lord in front of me. I will not stumble because he is on the right side. That's why my heart celebrates and my mood is joyous. Yes, my whole body will rest in safety because you won't abandon my life. To the grave, you won't let your faithful follower see the pit. You teach me the way of life. In your presence is total celebration. Beautiful things are always in your right hand. So, Matt, as you hear this psalm, there's a lot. There's a lot. It almost is a psalm in 2 or 3 parts, right? But what sticks out to you the most?
I think the big thing is that the author of the psalm is definitely putting their trust in God, and it points to things that they've been given, and points to things how God won't abandon them. And I think this is a good one for us to hear right now with all that's going on in the world. And asking ourselves, where are we putting our trust? Are we putting our trust in man, or are we putting our trust in the divine? And I think when we really wrestle with that, we can see moments in our life where we have trusted God, and we can point to those things. And then there are times where we can say, no, we really haven't trusted God. We followed the wrong path. And I think that it's really the writer here is definitely kind of acknowledging that that's what they're doing, and then the things that came out of that, and how God is there protecting them. And so, Zach, as you think about, how did it strike you?
Like I said, this feels very much like a psalm in 3 parts, right? There's maybe even a journal entry of here's what I need. Here's where I'm at. Protect me, oh God. I take refuge in you. The world around me is suffering, and they're chasing after other gods and lifting up offerings, but that's not what I'm going to do. You've provided for me in such a way that I'm going to continue to move towards you. And then it moves on into really that relational piece of I've acknowledged, almost like prevenient grace to justifying grace, right? Or sanctifying grace, whichever's next. Escapes me this morning.
You might want to work on that before you're
I know, right? Always get the last 2 mixed up. But it moves on into that the Lord will bless me and advise me that I'm here and I'm going to put God God first, and even when I stumble, God's there by my side, right? That I'm never alone in these moments. And then I think what catches my attention really fully is that last verse 11. You teach me the way of life, and your presence is total celebration. Beautiful things are always in your right hand. And for whatever reason, that progression of I need you, you're with me, here's the beautiful way of life. There's this celebration, and beautiful things are to come in the midst of um, life being bumpy, life being rough, midst of grief, as well as joy in the celebrations that we have in this life.
Well, and I think that that's where this idea of, who are we following, who are we trusting, it really comes into play, and how we're, in this age when we're so polarized, obviously we are missing the mark on paying attention to God in a lot of ways. And so I think you're right. That last line kind of struck me too. And that God, like when we lean into God and we really lean into, the real essence of what God has called us to do, to love God and to love our neighbor with our whole self. If, and when we do that, there's a celebration there. There's a celebration that we can't, it's just a beautiful celebration to be a part of. Mostly because then we have more experiences and we get to see life in its all fullness, and we don't become shuttered and closed in. I think one of the worst things that we do as humans is we shut ourselves off to the world, and we don't get to know our neighbors. Our society has modeled that, at least in the United States, where we have homes that have 12-foot privacy fences and like gated communities, and we've moved away from actually getting to know and loving and caring for a neighbor, and putting up barriers that keep us from loving our neighbor, which then puts barriers for us to really connecting with God. And what we really need to do is work towards removing those barriers and trying to do those things that God has asked us to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the physical barriers that we put up, like fences and hedges and gated communities, are purely symbolic of the barriers that we've built in our hearts and minds and souls, right? I think that's where it starts. Digging into community and our relationship with people and with God. It starts much more with the internal rather than the external, but the internal often materializes on the external, right? So I think you're right. We've built barriers, physical barriers in our life to keep people out. But I think that started from within.
I agree.
And I see that's where the psalmist touches on that, right? The people have gone this way, but I'm going to go this way. In being open and willing to get to know your neighbor is often in many places countercultural today, right? Because we are so closed off, especially today in the midst of COVID when we're not sure.
Yeah, but I was also thinking too, and this happened last week before you came and picked me up, when I was over at Angie's house, and watching how her neighborhood came together. Mm-hmm. Like, oh man, that was so beautiful. And then thinking about in my neighborhood where we kind of did a little bit, nobody really stopped and hung out. I mean, we would stop and chat every now and then when, but I've also reflected lately, like when was the last time I actually sat outside again? Mm-hmm. Since I've kind of been back.
Right.
And so I really, I'm wrestling with that and thinking about like, what can I do? And some of that is just making myself available to my neighbor, wherever that may be. And that can be difficult, but it does become where we need to do some self-awareness work and being aware of when we're allowing fear to creep into what we're doing and not getting to know our neighbor. And then, asking ourselves, where do we take our refuge at? Like, where do we lead into when we, when we're doing things that make us feel uncomfortable? Are we going to God and say, hey, God, I need you to help me through this in this time. I need you to lead me and guide me. I think that, like, I love this psalm. I never have read. I mean, I read through the Psalms and I've read through this one. I definitely probably have read through this one that never, has touched me like it has today. It definitely has spoke to me a little bit. Almost so I wish I kind of would have included it on Sunday. It would work well with if they're lectionary preaching. This would work well with the Mark chapter today. And I think it works well with Thanksgiving and asking ourselves as we prepare for Thanksgiving. you know, how are we being aware of God in our life, and where are we giving praise? Because that's what the author is doing here, is giving God praise for all that what God has done.
Right. Well, and I think you're right to an extent that for many it's the fear and the uncomfortableness of being out, right? COVID or not, it's just personality, right? We're not sure. That makes us uncomfortable. But I too, that's not me. I love being out and meeting people. None of that's fearful or uncomfortable. But what it is for me is I'm tired, right? I don't have the energy always to pour into either a new relationship or just being present with people. And so I think there's a lot that goes into that, whether it's fear, whether it's just being uncomfortable, or if it's just being wore out and not having any more to give. There's a lot that goes into that, that keeps us from being in our front porches or being fully present wherever we are. And yeah, I do. I'm like you. I think this psalm brings us back into that of, here's this lament of, I'm watching people go all of these different directions and do these different things. And I find my grounding here in the Lord, and I'm going to take that and run with it and see where it goes.
And so that's, I think, a good place to land, paying attention to where God is at work in our lives, acknowledging it, and not being afraid to share that. And I think that we do those things, we will find that celebration that's there in verse 11. So I want to encourage you to do that. Zach, do you have anything else to bring it before we bring it to a close?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. And so we want to encourage you to go to our website at beardedtheologians.com, check out all of our great content that we have up. And, if you're looking for an Advent study, we'd encourage you to maybe look over and see what Matt Raw said last week in the podcast. We had a good conversation with him. And so just, give that a look-see, and other than that, thank you for listening today. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
First, guys, I want you to subscribe and like this video and push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.